Good day from OG Benchmarks. I recently built my first thin mini-ITX PC. I love it, but then I found something really interesting. Retail mini PCs. Let's start with my thin mini-ITX build. It's based on an old architecture, the LGA 1155 socket with a Sandy Bridge CPU. Still, it's fine for me. The PC works great for typical desktop needs. It's indeed tiny, well under 2 liters for the case volume. I've actually been working on gathering the parts for this build off and on for quite a while, so it's nice to see it finished. The reason for this video, however, is this little PC. This happens to be the PC in a space I use at my place of work. I got this at the end of the summer. The PC works great for typical desktop needs, and it's indeed tiny, well under 2 liters, barely over 1 liter. I knew that these things existed, but I didn't know they were actually so cool. This is a Dell Optiplex Micro. By the way, this computer has a Skylake i5 CPU. It's quite a bit of a step up from the Sandy Bridge i3 PC that I built. Okay, of course I'm familiar with the Dell Optiplex line. Those things are everywhere. The big boy Optiplex is the mid-tower. It has a volume of about 15 liters. My first custom computer ever was a Haswell-era Optiplex mid-tower that I upgraded with an SSD, more RAM, and a low-end GPU. Special thanks to the Game Bench for many great tutorials. I'm certainly familiar with the small form factor Optiplex, with a case volume of around 8 liters. I've been using these for 20 plus years at my place of work. Then there is the unloved ultra small form factor case at less than 4 liters. It actually qualifies as a tiny PC by Intel standards. The micro form factor, however, was less familiar to me. I had seen these micro PCs, but I don't think they had crossed my path since I started to consider the thin mini-ITX form factor. So how would this micro PC be different from a thin mini-ITX build? Let's see how they compare. The thin mini-ITX is small, and the micro PC is even smaller. Okay, both are completely legitimate for desktop use. Surfing, YouTube, office stuff, email. Both have a socketed CPU. So you swap out the CPU as well as the RAM and storage. That's nice. Where they differ is that the thin mini-ITX consists of standard parts. The micro PC has lots of proprietary parts. The cooler motherboard case that often can't be moved from one build to another. That's kind of a downer, but maybe it's not all so bad. Once I saw the Dell, I looked around for other OEMs that sell these tiny PCs. There are lots and lots. Acer sells a few under its Veriton line. Acer's cases are a bit larger than the others, but still quite a bit smaller than my thin mini-ITX build. Dell, of course, has the Optiplex Micro. HP has both the ProDesk and MiniDesk lines, each with a mini variation. There might be other HP lines with a mini model, but these are the main ones. Lenovo sells a tiny model within its ThinkCenter line. Like HP, Lenovo might have some less popular variations, but the ThinkCenter is the main one. If you know of other mini PC models put out by OEMs, please let me know in the comments. When I saw all the OEMs with tiny, micro, mini PCs, I was blown away. These have mostly gone completely under my radar. How long have these been out there? Here is a table that shows all the different CPU sockets that have been included in the tiny PCs made by Acer, Dell, HP, and Lenovo. I only included socketed CPUs, no BGA, embedded CPUs, or Chrome PCs. This list probably is not complete, but I can confirm that at least these on the screen do exist. In short, you can see that by the time Haswell CPUs were out, all the OEMs were making these tiny PCs and have continued to do so. Lenovo was early to the scene with a Sandy Bridge Ivy Bridge model and the LGA 1155 socket. The AMD sockets are not nearly so universal. HP goes back to FM2 Plus. Acer slipped in an AM1 model. HP and Lenovo both have an AM4. Again, this list is probably not complete, but it's all that I could find. Again, if you know others, please do let me know in the comments. Complete or not, this listing does show that there are lots of potential PCs from different eras to buy on the market. Alright, so these tiny PCs are out there for the buying. If you get one on eBay, for example, what components or accessories will come with it? Well, almost everything you buy will include, at a minimum, the case, the motherboard, and the corresponding cooler fan system. Many will also include a CPU and RAM, at least 8 gigabytes and often more. Finally, since these are normally second-hand office PCs, they often have had the storage drive removed. When they do include one, it's often an high-density drive instead of an SSD. Oddly, the power brick is often also missing. There must be piles of discarded power bricks somewhere. One word of warning, if the storage drive is not included, be sure to check that the storage drive mounting hardware, the drive mount or sled, and the screws are included. These items are overpriced if you buy them separately. Always read the listing description carefully because the mounting hardware is often not part of the deal. Alright, let's go back through this list. For the oldest tiny PCs, let's say an LGA 1155 Lenovo ThinkCenter. With patience, you can get a complete system on eBay for around $50. So for $50, you're going to get a case, a motherboard and cooler, and along with everything else. If you instead wanted to do a thin mini-ITX build from scratch, a case will run you $30. Likely with a 2-month wait on AliExpress. A motherboard might be $50 or more, and a cooler would be $20. Even the cheapest Sandy Bridge CPU will cost $5, and a 4 gig stick of RAM might be $5 or $10. A PSU will be $10. That means for a $50 purchase, the OEM system could give about $120 in build value. Upgrade the CPU or not, and pick up a reasonable SSD, and you can have a functional tiny PC for a very low cost. Now I understand not everybody wants an old Sandy Bridge PC. If you buy a newer second-hand system, say a Skylake system, the cost of the OEM PC will go up. But of course the value of the included motherboard and CPU will also rise. Here's another factor to consider. A thin mini-ITX case on AliExpress will cost nearly $30, but those cheap cases don't have USB 3.0 connectors for the front panel. If you want a thin case with USB 3.0 on the front panel, you're going to pay upwards of $60, maybe more for that front panel option. On the other hand, all these OEM cases automatically have front USB 3.0 support from the motherboard if it's generationally appropriate. So if USB 3.0 is involved, then an OEM mini PC brings an additional $30 value based on the case and motherboard alone. You'll need to assess your particular needs, but I do think these used OEM PCs represent a lot of value and possibly an alternative way to quickly get a tiny PC. Okay, what am I saying? I'm saying that these OEM tiny PCs can potentially serve as a bare bones route to your own tiny PC. I'm not a genius for figuring this out. In fact, lots of eBay sellers explicitly sell these tiny PCs with the word bare bones in the title. Just a warning, not all bare bones PCs bring the same value. Make sure the PC isn't completely bare. Regardless, just the case, motherboard, and fan are a pretty decent deal. Granted, these three key parts are completely proprietary and must be used together. That's a big strike. Still, you can find these easily. The remaining components, RAM, CPU, and storage can be found anywhere in separate listings. Even PSUs are easy to find. Just make sure you have the right connectors and voltages. Finally, because the case and other key parts are proprietary, the case can be designed as small as possible, truly tiny, and quite a bit smaller than a do-it-yourself thin mini-ITX build. I hope this discussion of the used OEM tiny PC landscape was helpful for you. These could be a quick entry into a tiny PC of your own. Please consider subscribing, leaving a like, or making a comment. Take care.